Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about position. What? What are you looking at? Oh, right, I look a little different. Kind of had a little makeover. You like it? Aw, thanks. Okay, so what I'm about to tell you is super important. Like, super important. It's some of the most important information that you're going to need as a poker player. So basically, what your position is the seat at the table where you're at in relation to the blinds over here. So over here are the blinds, the big blind and the little blind. Usually the big blind is double whatever the small blind is, and those are the mandatory bets that you need to put into the middle of the pot every 6 or 9 or 10 hands. How many other people are at the table dictates how often that you have to put those blinds in. And then over here is the dealer button. So the dealer button is really important post-flop. What the flop is when there's 3 cards in the middle of the table, which I'll show you soon. And that's kind of after that. So when those 3 cards come, that's post-flop. But right now, because there's no flop, we're in something called pre-flop. So when we're pre-flop, being the big blind kind of sucks, because you're the guy that has to put all the money into the middle, or at least most of it, first. And it stinks. So because you're the first one that has to put their money in, you kind of get a little reward by being the last one to dictate the action pre-flop. So if somebody bets, you have the choice to either call or fold, and you have that first opportunity to kind of dictate how the action for the rest of the hand is going to go. So basically what that means is when you're the big blind, you get to choose what happens last. So clockwise over here, this guy over here, he's the one who gets to make the first decision. And that sucks, because now you have to go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players actually to try to win this hand. So now because you've got to go through 5 players, what that means is you have to make a decision. My hand has to be strong in order to beat these 5 people. As opposed to being over here in the small blind where you only need to beat this one guy, assuming everybody else folds. If everybody else folds, that means that you only have to go through one guy over here, the big blind. So that means that you can play more hands. Because if you only have to go through one guy, your hands don't need to be as strong. So that's the situation where you can play your 9-10 suited, or your 8-7 suited, or your king-jack off. It doesn't really matter. The key is just making sure that you're aware of how many people are left. That way you're making a good decision. So, what you should be noticing here is when you're one of the first people to act, you should be playing less hands. Your range, which is basically the different combinations of hands that you play, should be a lot tighter. So the 2 types of ranges that we're going to talk about today are loose ranges, which means you play a lot of hands, and tight ranges, which means you don't really play too many hands. What you should be focused on is when you have more people to beat, the tighter your range should be. It's really just that simple. Every now and then, we play against people who don't really care about their position and just play hands willy-nilly. And those are the people that are actually a lot of fun to play against, because those are the people where you're going to make the most money off of. They're not positionally aware. And that's why being positionally aware is really important. So you know, hey, you know what? Like, sure, this hand is pretty good, but not right now. Especially post-flop positioning, which I'm going to talk about next. So what I'm going to talk about now is post-flop positioning. So I'm going to fast forward this hand a little bit. And as you can see now, we have a flop. So once the flop comes, the small blind is the first person to make a decision. If the small blind is folded, then it goes to the big blind. If the big blind is folded, then it goes to me. I'm called under the gun. That means I'm first to act. Over here on the button, he's the one who gets to act last after the flop and the turn and the river. So being the button after the flop is actually pretty OP, because now you get to make that final decision. So if I bet right now, this guy can just call, and then we see another card. You're kind of rewarded for being the small and big blind beforehand by being allowed to be the button and make most of the decisions now. It's kind of your reward for putting in money when you didn't want to. It was against your will. So now because you put up with that, you get rewarded by having the advantage of all of the possible information, and then you get to make your decision. Being out of position over here kind of sucks, because over here I have top pair. I decide to check, and he bets. So now what he thinks is because I checked, I'm weak. So if I call his bet, it means I probably have a jack, and then his tens over here are probably no good. And I'm going to stop the strategy actually right there, because the whole positioning post-flop is actually something that I really should explain in another video. But getting that little idea out now just kind of makes you a little more aware of exactly what to do. And what I cannot stress enough is position is one of the most important things you can pay attention to when you're at the poker table. It's honestly the difference between winning and losing sometimes, because now you have all of this information what this other person is trying to portray to you. Whether they're telling the truth or not is a completely different animal. That's something that you need to figure out on your own or through future videos that I decide to make, but that's exactly where I'm going to stop it today. So, thank you very much for watching this video. If you like it, please press subscribe. I'd actually really appreciate it, and hopefully I can make more material like this in the future. But for now, I'm going to sign off. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye.